What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Fish the Moment. It's common knowledge that suspending jerkbaits are a great way to catch giant bass in the springtime. However, a lot of anglers will go to the lake and throw a jerkbait for 2 or 3 hours and never get a bite. This used to be me until I figured out a bait modification that is mandatory for getting bass to react to a jerkbait. It can be the difference between getting 10 bites a day on a jerkbait and not getting a single fish in the boat. Let's get into it.
Over the past year, I've thrown jerkbaits offshore more than ever thanks to the Garmin LiveScope. It all kind of started when Dustin Connell won the Major League Fishing Red Crest on Lake Eufaula in Alabama. He was throwing a jerkbait over the top of brush piles for pre-spawn bass and was catching some absolute giants. I went out to the lake 2 to 3 days after that tournament to try to replicate that pattern on the lake, and within 5 minutes I caught a 6-pounder on a jerkbait over the top of a brush pile, and I watched it follow my bait out with LiveScope. Over the course of the next couple of months, I ended up catching my personal best bass, which was a 10-pounder on a jerkbait over a brush pile, and I watched him hit on LiveScope, and dozens of other fish over 3 to 4 pounds. The jerkbait is an absolutely great tool when the water temperatures are cold and below, let's say, 60 degrees. But I've also caught fish on this jerkbait over the summertime and into the fall when they're schooling or positioned higher up in the water column over offshore standing timber, brush piles, stuff like that. One thing though I've noticed with this jerkbait is that as I have been fishing it more, there are a few little tricks to actually get fish to commit to this bait rather than just follow it on LiveScope. When you throw the jerkbait out over a brush pile that has fish on it, a lot of times you actually see those fish follow the jerkbait all the way back to the boat but not eat it. And you can change your retrieve or your cadence, jerk faster, slower, jerk your rod up or down to try to get them to commit, and it just won't work. And I've been trying to figure out what I can do to make those fish actually commit to the bait, especially because I can see them a foot behind the bait staring at it. And what I realized is that one of the best ways to trigger those fish into biting has nothing to do with the actual way you jerk your rod, the retrieve, the line, anything like that. It's about how you weight your jerkbaits. Now I'm gonna go through all the different ways that I weight these jerkbaits to actually get these fish to bite. But in general, the way I do it is I try to add some sort of additional weight to either the front hook hanger, to the back hook hanger on a jerkbait, or across the entire jerkbait to get that bait to sink at a very slow rate. I want that jerkbait sinking at no more than a foot every 5 to 6 seconds. You don't want that bait sinking a foot per second, adding too much weight so it's sinking like a rock. You want it just barely be sinking down to those fish, a foot every 5 or 6 seconds. The most common scenario I see is the jerkbait will come over the top of a brush pile, and then the bass will actually follow it 10, 15, or even 20 feet away from the brush pile. They'll then sit directly behind the bait and just below it in the water column. And you can pause that bait with a suspending jerkbait and just let it sit there for 30 seconds if you want. And that fish will just stay right there. It might kind of circle around underneath, but it's just waiting for something to happen to that jerkbait. If you jerk that bait up then, away from them, sometimes they'll come and react, but most of the time they'll just move a little bit closer, nose up to the back of the tail of that jerkbait. You work it again and they get right behind it. And that's kind of the typical response that I saw from a lot of these fish. So what I decided to do was try to weight that jerkbait to see if I could get a little bit of a different response. The first thing I tried was weighting the entire jerkbait equally so that when those fish are sitting right behind the bait, it will fall down to their level straight down. It doesn't fall nose first, it doesn't fall tail first, it's just falling perfectly straight down. This is actually the way that I weighted this Smithwick Perfect 10 Rogue to catch my personal best bass, that 10-pounder I caught, and a lot of other really big fish. The standard Perfect 10 Rogue comes with what looks like about size 4 round bend treble hooks. But I upgraded it to these Gamakatsu EWG size 4 trebles. Those extra wide gap hooks have a little bit more metal in the shank, which makes them just slightly heavier than these round bed hooks. And I weighed them on a little scale just to kind of get a sense for how much more they weighed. And when you put 3 of them on this Smithwick Perfect 10 Rogue, that bait will just sink super, super slow as long as you're in that kind of 50-degree water temperature range. If you get a little bit colder water or warmer water, sometimes the water temperature will actually impact how fast this bait will sink or even cause it sometimes to rise. So I will adjust these hooks depending on if I need the bait to sink a little bit faster or if I need it to not sink so fast. And that might mean only changing out 2 of these hooks with the EWGs and leaving 1 of the stock hooks on there. Or I might just add like 1 wrap of lead wire to each of these hooks around the actual hook shank of the bait to make them sink just a little bit slower. That's an old trick that I learned from some of the guys in Central Arkansas, adding that lead wire wrapped around the hook shank. And all you're trying to do, guys, is get that jerkbait in this situation to fall perfectly level. You want it to be kind of parallel to the bottom of the lake, falling straight down. I'm trying not to get it to go either nose first or the tail first down, and that was the first initial test I did. I thought that might look the most natural. I wasn't 100% sure. It caught me some really good fish, caught a 10-pounder on it, so it seemed to work out pretty well. But that was the initial test with the weighting of the jerkbaits. I've since tried a couple other different options though. One option I tried was to try to have that jerkbait sink nose first. And what I did to this Megabass Vision 110 Plus 1 jerkbait is upgraded just the front hook. This is a standard jerkbait with the standard outbar Megabass hooks. And they're great sticky hooks, so I don't change them out. And even the Smithwick Perfect 10 Rogue hooks, they work good enough. You don't need to really necessarily change them out unless you're changing the weighting on these baits. So I'll just change out 1 of those hooks on this Megabass jerkbait to a size 5 Gamakatsu round bend treble hook. This size 5 hook and just 1 of them on the front hook hanger will cause that bait to nose down a little bit and sink super, super slow. Again, 5 to 6 or a foot every 5 to 6 seconds. 1 foot every 5 to 6 seconds is just barely falling. And I've tried this with both the Vision 110 jerkbait, the Vision 110 Plus 1, and also with the Vision 110 Plus 2 jerkbait by Megabass. I love my Megabass jerkbaits. I just have a lot of confidence in them from years and years of fishing. Back in the day, it was like the jerkbait when I was growing up, and it was like everyone was like, you need to throw a Megabass. And so just love these jerkbaits. And obviously I throw other brands too, like the Smithwick, which also gets the job done, but I'm kind of a Megabass fanboy when it comes to jerkbaits. But what I do with this Megabass Vision 110 Plus 2 is I actually keep the same 2 stock hooks on there, but instead of changing out to the size 5 Gamakatsu, I actually go to that size 4 EWG treble hook, Gamakatsu size 4 EWG. It's the same hook I changed out on this Perfect 10 Rogue. And it seems like on that the Plus 2 Megabass, having that little bit bigger hook on there will cause it to go nose down even more, but it'll still fall pretty slow. So I find that this is kind of the right combination for me. The size 5 round bend Gamakatsu on the Plus 1 jerkbait, and on the Plus 2 jerkbait is that size 4 EWG. And this causes that bait again to fall nose down, and it works great. I actually had a double on this earlier this fall, multiple doubles in one day now I think about it, when I was using this jerkbait over the top of some big boulders on Beaver Lake. And something about that bait falling nose down, again, creates that same response from those fish. They basically will nose right up to that bait, and then as it starts falling kind of away from them, they seem to really like to react to that and eat it. So this worked out pretty well, and that seems to also be an effective way to weight your jerkbaits. However, there is one other way that I've tried weighting my jerkbaits, which I think might be the best way. I'm not 100% sure yet. I've been trying it over the past couple of months here after I saw a video, and I don't know how I missed this, but it was a video from Hank Cherry, who was fishing the Bassmaster Classic on Lake Gunnersville, and he won that event throwing a Megabass Vision 110 Plus 1 jerkbait just like this. And he's a jerkbait expert, and he was weighting his jerkbait so that the bait sank tail first instead of falling nose first or neutral. And what I've been doing with these jerkbaits is trying to figure out the right amount of weight to get them to sink nose first so that they sink slowly, but not so nose first that they sink like a rock. And it's a kind of a tricky balance to hit with these jerkbaits. Sometimes they'll start sinking pretty fast. If you get too much weight, they'll just go straight down and torpedo down into the lake. Not really what you want. You want them definitely to fall backwards, kind of at a backwards angle. And my thought with this is just my theory, is that again, those fish will position behind this jerkbait, right behind the jerkbait, and just below it. And as that jerkbait starts to sit and then fall backwards into their face, those fish can't resist it and they just go and eat it. And I've had some really good success this winter already, weighting my jerkbaits with the back hook, back treble hook, being a little bit bigger than the front two, having it fall backwards, and just again, try to get it to fall as slow as you can. And the weighting on these jerkbaits is gonna be different depending on the brand you're fishing, what hooks you're using, all that stuff. What I recommend is just picking up a bunch of different hook sizes. I just use Gamakatsu treble hooks, that's just what I've always used, but you can go with any other brand there as well. And I would pick up some hook sizes, a size 4, a size 5, size 6, maybe a size 2. There's a bunch of different sizes out there. In general, with these jerkbaits, it seems like a size 5 hook is a pretty good starting point, and they're really hard to find. So I'll leave a link down below to my Tackle Warehouse link that you can use if you want to support the channel. And if you click that link to these size 5 EWGs, it'll help support the channel, and also will help you get them, because again, most tackle shops don't carry that size 5, but that's normally what works best for me with these jerkbaits. And you know, there's 3 different ways to weight them then. You have weighting the front hook hanger, you have weighting the back hook hanger, and then you have distributing the weight perfectly even to get that bait to kind of have a parallel fall. Now, one thing I've thought about is it may not be a bad idea to actually have multiple setups on the boat if you're really dialed into a jerkbait bite. Potentially having a jerkbait that has a nose down fall versus a tail first fall may get different fish to react on different brush piles. Most of the time when I'm fishing these brush piles, there'll be multiple fish in them. You're not just gonna have one fish per brush pile. There's gonna be a school of 5 or 7 bass. And maybe one of those bass really reacts well to that bait falling tail first back into their face. But other fish might get freaked out by that and not like that. So maybe they want more of a neutral fall with that bait falling straight down parallel, or maybe they want that nose first fall. I don't think that there's an exact science in terms of which one is better. What I do know though is having that bait falling back down to the fish is what triggers a lot of those bites on LiveScope. And one thing I haven't talked about yet, to talk a lot about the weighting, but it's actually the retrieve on this. When I'm fishing one of these jerkbaits over these brush piles, what I'll do is I'll actually work that jerkbait pretty quick over the top of that brush, bring it out to, let's say 10 to 15 feet past that brush pile, and see if I can get some fish to follow it. If those fish will follow that jerkbait out of that brush pile 5 to 10 feet away from the brush, normally those fish will end up biting if you do the right things with your weighting and everything like that on the baits. And what I'll do then is once I get those fish 10, 15 feet away from those brush piles, I will pause that bait and just let it just sink super, super slow. And again, it's falling a foot every 5 seconds. So I might be letting this bait sit for 10, 15, 20 seconds sometimes. What you'll see is these fish will actually start seeing this bait fall, and it'll be falling, and it might be in 10 foot of water and the bottom of the lake is in 20 foot of water. It'll fall 3 feet over 15 seconds, and those fish will kind of get underneath it and they'll drop as the bait's dropping, and all of a sudden it'll just drop so far that they're like, oh, I just need to eat it. And they'll go and they'll just grab the bait after 15 seconds or so of pausing. This is not normally what I would do when I fish a jerkbait. Normally I just like to have like a 2-3 second pause on my jerkbaits, but there's something about with that weighted jerkbait, with those LiveScope fish, if you can let that bait pause for 15, sometimes 20 seconds, when you know they're following it and you have that jerkbait weighted to fall down, you will trigger some really good bites. It's kind of a weird technique. It's something that kind of I've just stumbled upon by accident, but it's something that definitely works. I've caught some giants doing it, and we're right in the middle of the season for it. So if you guys are interested in catching fish on jerkbaits, especially if you have the LiveScope, definitely pick up a suspending jerkbait weight those hook hangers with different size treble hooks to get it to sink and give it a try. And just a little plug for one of our sponsors here, the Bass Tank. If you guys don't have a LiveScope, they're actually doing a really great deal over at thebasstank.com. And on their product page, they have a special offer for a 9-inch Garmin unit with a LiveScope transducer for $2,200. You also get a mail-in rebate that can bring that price down to $2,000. And it is the best deal you're gonna find anywhere on a Garmin LiveScope. I know a lot of guys probably have a LiveScope by now if you're going to get one. It's a very controversial topic, but for whatever reason, if you've been on the fence, you haven't got one already, and you want to give it a try, finally ready to pull the trigger, head over to thebasstank.com. You can check out their whole list of products, find that special deal, and you can also have them install it for you to get it installed properly. I know a thing or two about installing these things improperly because they sent me a transducer and I was messing with a couple different brands of the forward-facing sonars, and I tried to put on the transducer myself and I got it all different angled and everything. I had to call the guys over there and they got me squared away. So trying to install it yourself, a lot of times will give you a bad image, bad picture, stuff like that. So better just take it to the experts so you don't mess up the cable or mess up your investment. It's definitely a good deal. They're the best in the business at getting a LiveScope on your boat. So that's it for this video, guys. Hopefully you learned something about how to weight your jerkbaits in the wintertime to get more bites from those finicky bass. If you enjoyed the video, I really appreciate you sharing it out with a friend if you think they'd enjoy as well. And also leave a like down the video, helps us out with the YouTube algorithm and gets this video out to more people. Thanks again for checking out this video. We'll see you all in the next one.